the land acknowledgement. In the spirit of respect, truth, and reconciliation, we honor and thank the Indigenous peoples on whose traditional and unceded lands we operate. The agenda is before you. There is one addition, and that's to a late item, which is an update on animal control. Oops, thank you, Grace.
No.
Oh, go ahead, Grace.
I'd like to speak to the agenda, please.
Oh, yeah.
Chair.
Okay.
Through the chair. The last thing on the agenda is Food Hub 70. I would speak to that saying it doesn't belong on this agenda. It belongs at the board. I would also say I'm a little wary of coming to these meetings and having the Food Hub on this agenda. I would also say that I had a phone call from the director who said she was leaving this alone now and going forward. I appreciated that. And quite frankly, if this continues, we will be looking at some legal action. So I would leave that in the hands of the regional district where it belongs. Otherwise, I will not be staying for that item today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director. James, do you want to speak to that? We did have a conversation. James and I had a conversation yesterday. So
yeah, just hearing the comments and through the chair. Obviously, it's for the committee to discuss. The intent, understanding of this item today is to look at how do we report going forwards on kind of the project as it develops. There's a few kind of ideas that I would have with reporting that would associate kind of with our work plans that we normally do and updates. But as the project, as I think most know, is kind of starting to get to groundbreaking very soon. Is there something different and interested that the committee may have in kind of the status about how that project's unfolding through this year as an item for discussion? So that was the intent, as best as I could describe it, versus kind of anything else that's already existing between RDKB and BCBA, and obviously that's up for discussion for folks around the table.
And yes, when it was brought, and from my perspective, the whole, as James said, it was more or less saying, okay, this is how we're going to report out to the board as the Food Hub. It wasn't the proposing the food or anything, it was just a matter of how is this going to be sent back to the board. And much like we have a council when we're dealing with our flood mitigation, we have contractors that do it, they report to staff, and then staff once a month brings a detailed report. Here's where we are, here's what we're doing. I think that was the intent, Grace. Is that Director? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, good Chair. I appreciate that. It would have been nice if it said that.
Okay.
Because as soon as I see Food Hub on here, I get pretty damn prickly now. And I'm sure you guys all understand why. So thank you for that explanation. Thank you, James. And in that case, I'm fine with the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Did I have a mover? Thank you. Jerry, seconder. Brenda Kay, all those in favor? Opposed and carried. Thank you. The minutes. There are two sets of minutes. One is February of the 11th and one March 5th.
Motion to accept.
Motion to accept. Thank you, Sharon. Seconded by Linda Kay. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you. Okay. Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Rob.
You can hear me okay?
You can.
Okay, terrific. Well, through you, Chair, thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the activities of Boundary Country Tourism in Toda since our last update. With help from Elizabeth, who I think is there in person, and Amy Neller from the Symphony Tourism team. There's a lot of information here, and with only 10 minutes, I won't unpackage everything. But I thought the committee might appreciate having a little more information versus less that you can peruse at your leisure. And of course, we are happy to answer any questions anytime on anything in the presentation that we don't dive into too deeply this morning. So I guess I'm not sure if I'm controlling slides or who's controlling slides, how this works.
Yeah, sorry, Rob, if you want to control the screen, I can hand it over to you, or I can just scroll through what you're looking at.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, James, and I'll just give you a heads up. I think I can move to the land acknowledgement slide. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. I do want to recognize and acknowledge our respect and gratitude for the tourism-related work we do on the traditional lands of the Sinixt people. Additionally, I'd like to acknowledge that our work through TODA is conducted on the lands of the Interior Salish peoples, including Syilx people whose territory our office is based in. Next slide, please. And I won't unpack the motley crew, but these are some of the Symphony and TODA members who are involved in varying degrees with Boundary Country Tourism. And some of them you have gotten to know over the years. Next slide, please, agenda. Thank you. For today's update, I want to very briefly highlight some of the work the team has been involved with and then spend a couple of minutes talking about the co-op marketing program and then the MRDT. Next slide, please. As you know, the work of Boundary Country Tourism is guided by an advisory group. One of the key issues that was raised last year was the need for fixing the gateway signs coming into Boundary. And with Elizabeth leading the way, we have refurbished 2 of the signs and we'll be refurbishing the other 2 this spring. So we're really excited about this. I think there's nothing worse than having signs that are either really looking rough or in fact are have been knocked down. So we have been addressing this and you can see from this one picture that the improvements are significant. Next slide, please. In collaboration with the Boundary Regional Chamber of Commerce, Community Futures, Trails to the Boundary, and you can see a long list of other supporters here. We worked with Destination BC and TODA and the Tourism Innovation Lab to bring the SPARK program to Boundary. This program provides financial and coaching support to startups and businesses in the province that want to expand into new areas. And so we made the case for bringing it to the Boundary region. We had a great response, largely thanks to the community partners who got the word out. And the judges had to select 3 winners from the, I believe, 9 or 10 businesses that expressed interest in the program, and it was a huge success. You can see the winners here. And as I said, it provides financial and coaching support to startup and businesses that are wanting to expand. Next slide, please. In March, Elizabeth attended the annual Outdoor Adventure and Travel Show in Vancouver again. This year, we shared a booth with Big White to help people understand where Boundary is and all that the region has to offer. Year over year, this event has proven to be a great way to introduce people from the Lower Mainland to Boundary, and we plan to continue with this, participating in this event. Next slide, please. In 1 week's time, we'll be launching the new Boundary Country Tourism website. This new site will be leveraging AI and over time to provide a more user-friendly experience and help visitors with enhanced trip planning features, including helping them build their own itineraries. So this is coming, as I said, next week. It'll be a significant improvement over the one that we have currently and have had for a while. So we're very excited about that. Next slide, please. One of the campaigns that proved to be very successful this year, and again, largely led by Elizabeth, was the Stars in the Boundary campaign, which focused mainly on promoting Boundary's Dark Skies attraction while showcasing local businesses. Dark Skies tourism continues to grow globally as a sought-after attraction. So Boundary is really well positioned to capitalize on this natural asset. And I can see this initiative continuing into the future. So next slide just gives you another example of the communication associated with it. Okay, and next slide, please. Yes, that's it. Visitor Guide. Another major achievement this year has been the redesign of the Boundary Country Visitor Guide, and it has just been printed. The guide is more concise now with updated branding to reflect the overall Boundary identity and in alignment with Destination BC branding. And by going through an RFP process, we were able to reduce production costs by almost half. Next slide, please. Other communication channels that have continued to feature prominently in the team's work have been the newsletter and social media campaigns, all of which have continued to garner more and more engagement. We've been really pleased with the metrics associated with measuring the increases. So I'm just going to ask you, James, if you can just sort of pause on each of the next slides briefly, just so people get a sense of what we've been doing. So social media marketing. And again, I won't go through all of these, just leave you to have a look, and then we can, if you have any questions, we can answer those. And great, and then thank you. Next slide there. Thank you. For the collaborations, we've continued our collaborations work with both Big White and 2 initiatives based on Highway 3, both of which are designed to encourage visitors to embark on road trips that will bring them through the region and explore all that Boundary has to offer. So this is an important part of our work, and we will continue to focus on this. Next slide, please. We've also worked with TODA and Destination BC to have relevant influencers come to the region and share their stories about their experiences, further spreading the message through their significant social media channels. We are selective with who those influencers are that we support. They have to align with what we are trying to achieve strategically in this region. And so we look for those opportunities as they arise. Next slide, please. Boundary Tourism has participated in 3 co-op groups, which are Destination BC-led shared cost programs that we leverage to promote the region through different marketing channels. In addition to the Boundary Country Co-op, we have participated in Cruise the Crow's Nest and the Highway 3 Alliance program. You can see here that the Highway 3 Alliance will not be continuing. It came to a close in the end of March, but the Cruise the Crow's Nest will. Just for your reference, we've been able to secure $84,000 in matched funds from DBC for Boundary Country Co-op, the co-op group, leveraging financial resources from RDKB and Big White, as well as MRDT. And moving on to the next, as it relates to MRDT. Finally, I've included a few slides related to the MRDT program, highlighting end of year 2024 financials and priorities for the 5-year plan, as well as the 1-year MRDT plan, which will guide our work in the upcoming year. And so there you see the MRDT financials as of end of calendar year 2024. And then in the next slide, you'll see the 3 areas that we have been focusing on: destination marketing, industry development, and destination and product management. These are the 3 large areas or buckets that are part of the 5-year plan that is submitted to and reviewed by Destination BC. And then under each of those, we have goals and these are the primary goals that you'll see here under those 3 buckets. And then if we can go to the next slide, this is the 1-year 24-25 plan. These are our priorities, continuing with the research, continuing the marketing campaigns particularly around road touring, support for local tourism events, updating kiosks, community kiosks and signage, more industry development, and then digitization of Boundary Country major trails. And so these are also informed by the advisory group. And then finally, I just wanted to add that through TODA and with support letters from Boundary community partners, we have secured approximately $15,000 through the Economic Trust of the Southern Interior, aka at CPC, to coordinate and facilitate a tourism-related investment attraction research and community workshop project with Skift Advisory that will build upon the work Skift and Destination Canada did actually closer to 2 years ago, looking at the development of the Highway 3 corridor as a major national tourism development initiative. So that will be coming in the spring. And I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll open up to questions from directors. Go ahead, Director Sharon.
Hi, not so much a question as just a comment. Wonderful presentation, the Starry Skies. I saw a documentary 10 years ago, 12-year-old boy from Britain had never seen the stars, right, from London. And I like the Cruise the Crow's Nest name, kind of replacing that Highway 3. And I do actually have a question, as I just.
I know you would.
The digitization of the trails is wonderful. I think that's great. It's hard to get our hands sometimes on maps. You mentioned working with AI on the website. Have you had to hire someone specifically for that, or is your staff able to manage that on their own?
A little bit of both. We do have staff working on the website, but there is a specialized component there that we do have subcontracted for the development of the website.
Thank you, Rob. Wonderful presentation. Beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Any questions? Go ahead, Director.
Chair Baker, I'm not sure if this question is for staff or for Rob, but we've discussed a little bit about the 2 to 3% MRDT. I've noticed over the province that probably 55-60% of them are at 3%. Now that they've added affordable housing into this as part of the projects that we can apply this money towards, do we as a board look at the change from 2 to 3%? And do we look at the projects for the affordable housing, or is that something that's done all at the MRDT level with Destination BC?
Yeah, it's probably something for us to discuss. We mentioned it before, and I think Rob, you could jump in as well. I think this is with some of the other ones, like we talked with, like visitor centre. I've sort of got that on the list with Rob for what comes next, because we're working with sort of this year's plan. I think the MRDT piece would be looking at the next 5-year contract. So if we have an interest to take it to the 3%, we can kind of direct that forwards, and that's then may have implications to people signing up and how successful the next 5-year contract would be. So some of these things I think is great we're talking about now, and it could be either 2 or 3 years down the road, or some of these other topics are going to be looking at our next year's annual plan. But it's good for us to have those conversations and for Rob to be aware of where our interests lie.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that James, that summarizes it brilliantly. I think that my understanding, and we can certainly look into this with DBC, but my understanding is that the focus on 2% at this point for this iteration of the 5-year plan is I think we're kind of locked in, but we can look into that more closely, and then moving forward as it relates to looking for leveraging some of the current dollars, well, in the next year's plan, operational plan for the visitor centers. I think that certainly makes sense, and I'm quite certain that DBC will be open to that. So I think that we do have a short-term and a longer-term plan, but I'm happy to follow up with DBC and just get more information about moving from 2 to 3% and leveraging that additional 1%, and when that could happen.
Okay. Director Grace.
Through the Chair, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. When is the 5-year agreement up? Number one. Number two, I'm not very happy that it now includes housing, quite frankly. As an EA director, we don't have any land to do housing. So that's our throat. and let some municipalities have a pretty good whammy here on our MRDT dollars, if you will, all of ours. So I'm not a big fan of that. And what I'm seeing is housing. But that doesn't include all of us. It just doesn't. And that's a political thing, I understand. However, I believe there should be a better conversation on where these dollars are going. Because it concerns me if Christina Lake is not going to get back what they put in and more, because we can't afford to keep somebody in the tourist booth. That's how serious that is, people. That's serious. So, Gateway is going to take over our tourism because we can't afford to keep somebody in there. They're there for a few weeks or a few months and they're gone. It doesn't help when you got that blue sign up there saying you are an information center. There should be somebody there. So I'm a bit concerned about the whole thing. Rob, I'm not saying this isn't a good presentation because it is, but I am citing my ongoing concerns on a fight we did to bring MRDT dollars back and help communities, and then to see it go into housing that I can't even do. So I have some concerns there.
So Rob, when is the 5 year?
So we are entering year 3 of the 5-year.
Director Jerry, on a follow-up?
Thanks, Jerry, but just some clarity on that, though. It's not just housing. It says permissible use of funds of 2018 provincial budget to help address local housing needs. So that could be partially for studies for the entire boundary, to have a look at what it's going to look like for the entire boundary as far as affordability and housing needs. So it's not just housing.
Follow-up, Director Grace?
Thank you for the director for that. That's been done to death. Sorry. Selkirk College has done it. Jennifer can tell you that as well. That has literally been done to death. And I want to see some action, period. So, sorry, Jerry, no offense.
Go ahead, Scott.
And I think appreciate all the comments and information, and I think what we're looking forwards, and with Rob, in addition to this sort of we have quarterly reporting and things, is what are our priorities, and I think perhaps laying out a bit of a schedule. The next time, a couple of months from now, perhaps when we're back with Rob and work plan updates, for our next year's kind of contract and investment. Like there are a number of things we can use MRDT dollars for, or that's broadening. But I think it's, if we can leverage those dollars, what does Rob need from us and by when in this year, so that can fall into next year's plan? And if, again, I think consensus seems to be one of the main topics we've talked about is an equitable investment in the visitor centres, across the region. That certainly seems like a good plan. And it's like, how do we do that? Does Rob need specific things from us and when in this year, so that we can try and get those dollars out of the pool, next year, and anything else that sort of follows. So I think if we can structure some of that, because we have so many different things and some of these provincial relationships, they've all got their own kind of time and calendars on what we need and when, and we often, they don't align with our own work plans and budgets and timing. So that's probably a good thing for us to focus on, so we can arm Rob with the right decisions at the right time.
I have a question, Chair.
Go ahead, Director Shannon.
It might be a simplistic question, but nonetheless, I'm going to ask. So MRDT funds, we're talking about looking at visitor centers and tourism, right? Because the funds are coming from tourists, basically. What about tourist attractions? So your flour mill, I see it as a dual purpose. Yeah, it's going to supply flour and grain, but it's really unique. And would some of those funds be available for actual tourist destinations as well as visitor centers? Just a thought. Excellent question.
Rob, you have
Yes, through you, Chair. I think any of these are possible ways of at least presenting the case for how resources could be used. I think, as was just mentioned, that they do have to have a tourism focus, and if the case can be made that there is a tourism focus, that there's and particularly if there's going to be an impact at the regional level, so not just for one specific community, but across the region, then that just strengthens the argument for how the resources could be leveraged. Coming back to James' comment just about timing, I think if we can look at coming up with some ideas over the summer and into the early fall, that would be ideal from a presentation of the next year's 1-year plan, which we try to wrap up in November and then get to DBC and get through the approval process in early December. So allowing us that much time, I think, over the summer would be, and then into early fall to identify what those priorities would be ideal.
Okay, supplemental.
Thank you. Supplemental, Director?
Thank you. So, what I'm hearing you saying is it's able to be looked at, and so region-wide, say the bike trail business that the Trail Society is doing, that would be something I think that could be funded through this partially, and I do believe that flour mill, like, I know what you mean about the whole boundary, but tourists come from all over. So if there's a specific site, say in Christina Lake or Area D or Area E, yeah, I think it's really worth looking at. So thanks for that, Rob.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Director Weiss?
To the chair, Rob, I was looking for a little bit of clarification on your comment. Do I understand what you said was, yes, we have this flour mill, which, yes, will be a tourist attraction, but funds cannot go directly to it because it doesn't affect the whole boundary? I'm looking for a little clarification, please.
So I think the guidelines for the MRDT planning and review process stress the importance of being able, whatever the funds are going to support, need to be reflective of the entire region, so that we need to be able to demonstrate impact at the entire regional level to strengthen the application, I guess. So I'm not sure if that, without getting into the sort of the nitty gritty of the guidelines, which I'm not really familiar with at this point. I do have them, but I don't remember them. I probably can't give much more clarity than that at this point, but I'm certainly happy to provide any additional information after this meeting.
Follow-up, Director?
Please, through the chair. Rob, my concern relies also on Director McGregor's comments. There are many things that rural areas are not able to take advantage of that municipalities can. We're structured differently. We're full of agricultural land. We have different structures and rules. Because of that, we're unable to take advantage, right, and that's a concern. Can we address that moving forward? It's the longer I do this, the more I see that Area D cannot, it's a concern with community forests and many things. No one wants to deal with a regional district area, but the municipalities, it's easy to do business. Thank you.
I think that's probably more legislative than would fall under this category, because there's legislation that affects municipalities that may or may not reflect the regional districts. So,
right.
Director,
I move that the Boundary Services Committee receive the quarterly presentation from Rob McDonald, Managing Director, TOTA, as presented on April 8, 2025.
Second.
moved and seconded. Any further questions?
Good job.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Rob. Thank you Elizabeth, for coming and appreciate your report. We look forward to the next update.
Through you, Chair, thank you very much to the committee, and I look forward to being there in person for the next one.
Awesome. Excellent. Have a great day.
Thank you. You as well.
Okay, moving on to old business. Noxious weeds. Here's Janine.
Janine said she wasn't going to come today.
Oh,
He's dry.
Excuse me, Chair.
yes, go
I
ahead.
would move to accept.
You to approve the noxious weeds. Okay. first-
Thank you, Janine.
Moved and seconded. Sharon, Director Sharon. Okay. Any questions? Go ahead, Director Jerry.
Thanks, Chair Baker. Just a question about the seeding program. What exactly is that? Through the chair.
If I may, Chair, I am actually here. I didn't run away screaming. We're gonna look into it a little bit, but certainly what we've heard through our landowner program where we actually have backpack sprayers and ATV attachments and stuff like that, that a lot of the requests are actually for seeding assistance. So we've put it into the work plan just to kind of develop a program about that. So I don't know the details of it as yet, but ultimately the idea will be to provide some sort of support associated with seeding land, even as with crop rotations and or as to just make sure that there's decent ground cover so that invasive plants don't get an opportunity to establish in different areas. So that's kind of the concept behind it.
Excellent. Good luck with that. All those in favor? Opposed?
Yeah.
Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Janine. Glad you stepped in. Back to work. Okay, moving along to new business. The Richard Grant update in economic development. Sarah Dinsdale and Jennifer Whitmore. Come on down. Your pockets are heavy with money.
Not ours, yours. That's what we're here today to touch on. Go ahead, Sarah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so just quick next steps. I don't know, Jane, I don't really know where to start on that. Like where do you want to? Any questions or something?
Thanks through the chair. It was just a really light conversation because we're not talking about this yet really openly with the normal things with the province. You know, we get told we've got funding, but it's not really publicly announced. We follow the province. So many will know where we're at with a positive return with the grant, but details are not forthcoming sort of yet. So we just wanted to keep folks updated. If you're starting to think about things coming up this year and our work plans, this is obviously a big add-on that we could have got or could not have got. So it's a really good news, positive for what's coming up. And just following the course of, and the plan was just to have the quick conversation about that. I've had some questions by some about details, and we're not ready to talk about that yet and have all those specifics. But the next thing I would like to work on and just getting, again, the general nod, it's past direction that we'll be, if successful, we'll be working with Community Futures to essentially be a sort of project manager, coordinator role for this grant. So that's something I would like to get rolling with Sarah and Jennifer to get in place, and then as timing permits appropriately with the province and everything, then come back to you more to talk about implementation and what that looks like. So that was the quick sort of overview. If there's some questions and some things, please.
I'll add a little bit. So I can't speak to the current application because we haven't received it back yet with what the scope will be. But with the previous write-up grant, what was submitted was what we did. So the plan was submitted. If it comes back, then the plan is in place for the next 2 years, and it's already kind of set and done. And the province will allow for some minor changes, but essentially what they come back to us with is what the plan is. So there's not a lot of wiggle room for changing the scope of work at this point.
Director Sharon.
So basically, looking back, it's more with a focus on Midway and Greenwood, the municipalities with the outlying regional district. Like, that's what I understood originally.
So what was submitted,
Yeah.
and again, I don't know what's coming back, but what was submitted was kind of that three-part project. So one was economic development capacity for the West Boundary. So there was a personnel role in there for Greenwood and Midway. There was some funding for business supports. There was some funding for the grassroots economic development associations that are out there right now. There was a boundary-wide investment portal, and there was quite a bit in there for business supports and entrepreneurial supports. So that was the plan that was submitted.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sure Larry can get your copy of it.
Yeah, thanks for the,
Yeah.
there was a lot to it, so I appreciate it.
Jennifer,
Yeah,
please go ahead.
thank you very much. Yeah, and this plan that was submitted that we are still awaiting direction on was developed in consultation with economic development service providers that you all support across the region. So there was ample opportunity, and it was really born out of the work that we did in Midway. And that's the intent of the Reddit program at this stage and level. It is a regional district project. I want to be really clear about that. And the regional district is able to do what they want to do from a project management perspective. So we await further direction is essentially it.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, thank you both.
Thank you.
That was like verbal updates.
And I anticipate we'll probably be more likely to early summer. I think we're back.
Thank you.
About this, they'll be sort of ready for things like next month. And a work plan updates just to announce scheduled for June. In this schedule of things, so hopefully when we're talking dev and all the updates in June, that we'll have a lot more details to start going through.
All right, moving along, Boundary Watershed Service 2025 grant. The application submitted for the 2025 Boundary Watershed Service Grant are presented with staff's recommendation on the project. And do you have any comments, or I can read the recommendation? Go ahead, Jerry.
I move staff's recommendations for the grants that they're applying for.
Any further questions? No, expecting. Great. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you. Okay, Fortis wildfire safety. Discuss attached letter from Fortis BC regarding the new safety policy for wildlife services practices. Sharon, Director, do you want to?
Yes, thank you. Firstly, did any other regional district receive this letter from Fortis?
I did not.
You did not, you didn't as well. So, Area E was, recognized as, being a potential hotspot, pun intended. I have some concerns with this. Right? You know, I really like the power line safety settings. You know, when something falls on there, the power goes off anyway, and you know, so that makes sense. But the proactive precautionary measures, you know, they're saying that you know, they'll only intentionally turn off the power. The BC Utilities Commission, honestly, to me, and the dealings I've had personally in other businesses and through local government, I feel they have more muscle in the province. They are tough as nails, right? So if they're going to shut off your power, they're going to, and they have the go ahead from local government to do it, they're gonna. Yeah. And the problem with my residents is they don't all evacuate. They're supposed to, they should, but they don't. So we're going to shut off their power and effectively shut off their water. A lot of the ranchers and bigger people do have generators. However, you know, I'm not comfortable with it at all. And I do, you know, they're saying that they work closely to monitor wildfires. So in the event of a wildfire, they'll be working with the province and the regional district. But that doesn't mean that they're not. They will turn it off. They will. And I welcome any comments from people. I haven't even engaged with my constituents. I've asked that this goes to our APC, going to the board at the end of the month. Thank you, Chair.
Director Grace and then Director Lincoln.
Thank you, through the chair. I totally agree with you, Director. They're talking about having community meetings. Okay. I would like to give direction to the regional district to add it to all of the agendas for the APCs and have those conversations. I will also bring it to the rest of my committees to get more concentrated feedback. But you're right, a lot of us are on wells, and the minute power is gone, it's gone. As well, we could be in a 40 temperature, whatever. And then you've got people that are sitting in this hot, they don't even have a cooler house to go to.
Right.
It's ridiculous. It's not what we're paying power for, number one. And so I intend to be fairly strong on anything I put out there. So thank you, Sharon, for that. I completely concur.
Director.
Sharon, thank you for bringing this to our notice. I did not receive this. I don't know why I didn't. Like everyone else, rurally, I am on a well. If I cannot not get water for more than 12 hours, my stock dies in the heat. I lose my freezers, all the things. And the further out you go, the more problems with this. I have neighbors who are on our water system, so they retain their water access. But my animals will start dying after 12 hours in the heat without water. We need a firm and coherent response to this. I really like the idea of it going to all committees for discussion. We need to make some sort of strong response. Having a generator is great, but it costs $3,000 minimum. So, thank you.
I'll tell staff and then I'll go to Director Jerry.
Thanks for bringing this forward. As you said, it's going to the board for the end of the month. Obviously, conversations can spin off kind of everywhere. I think one of the most productive things for us to do at this point is to have the conversation at the board.
Yeah.
We will have, I'm sure, Mark Stevens at that meeting, and I think a good direction would be to get staff from that meeting to then. I thought about asking Mark for comments and things today, but he can probably already write us a small story about where this has come from and everything. So I think to get context first, maybe more productive for go through EM and get authority for the board to for Mark to do some of that work. I'm sure this is being discussed. It's not just in our communities, it's in other places in BC and the emergency programs. I would hope, I don't know, but there would be a lot of context with it, how the decisions are made on where and when, what, as we know with a lot of emergency management and activations and things, there's probably about 300 people from the province all involved in looking at the weather and making calls on, do we do this? Is this eligible to kind of activate and be an emergency situation, whether that's high winds and storms coming in, predictions of lightning and so on. So I anticipate that Fortis will somehow be wrapped into that kind of operational lens and decision making. Whether that's coordinated with BC Wildfire or EMCR on the weather calls and all those kinds of things. And I think if we hear a lot more from Mark, there may be some real defined kind of context for how it will come in, or Fortis could just be off on their own and making a decision on their own at will without collaboration. I suspect there will be some collaboration in the decision making, because there's also the risk of, if we are looking at emergency management, EOCs and activations, there may be areas that then we're operating in where power is critical as well. So them just pulling the plug may also have operational consequences. So I think going to the board, getting context and getting a review on this issue with Mark Stevens, and then response back, say, as a priority in May. I'm sure the rest of the board will be, supportive of that. And then we've got a lot more information. I would ask kind of through one channel, as opposed to all of us kind of trying, investigating and looking at other things. And then potentially we go back and we, with more information, we kind of perhaps inform our communities. If we talk about it with them all right now, where we don't have a lot of details, it might cause more kind of concern from people in the communities and things. One step at a time. I'm certainly happy to take direction today.
Jerry?
Thanks, Chair Baker. I was going to suggest that, but it's what you just said actually doesn't address the concern that Director Gibbs has, and that's when it comes to emergency management time. If we say evacuations for this region, they're going to shut the power off. And that's what we're saying pretty much by this conversation, from what I'm kind of getting out of the conversation. I'm not in favor of that whatsoever. I feel like it needs to be on the board meeting so that we can address it before we have these public engagements that are in May 15th or 14th and at least 2nd. Because I personally feel pretty strongly against this. I don't like it.
Director Richard.
Through the chair, I received an email, just read you one sentence. We've prioritized communities like yours within our electoral service area that are at the highest risk of wildfire. Are we? So it's not just regional district areas, it's the whole, so they could come in, to Midway, shut the power off. It's crazy.
That's why we have our own electoral system in Grand Forks. So there's a reason for that.
And as I say, if I may, it's under what conditions are they doing it? Is it when they're looking to shut off the power if there's higher likelihood of windstorms and things that'll bring power lines down that will then cause those added issues? Are they looking to so then that's potentially for a succinct and small period of time based on a set of conditions. I don't see this and read this as, there's a high wildfire risk, we're just shutting off the power. Because we have high wildfire risk for 3 months.
It does. It says in extreme temperatures.
Yeah.
Yeah, they will.
It's ridiculous.
And it doesn't matter, but the reason is the effect on livestock in the heat and my freezers and myself remains the same regardless of the reasoning behind it. Apologies, Chair.
So the wording here in this is that the piece I look at is this involves proactively shutting off power as a precautionary measure during extreme weather conditions in areas at high risk of wildfire. So it's what is that extreme weather condition that they're looking at? It's not wildfire condition. They're saying because there is a high risk of.
Yeah.
So is it where there are likelihood of is it windstorms where things are going to come down? What are those conditions that they're looking at to make decisions on when they'll turn off the power? And I think, as I say, our region, we will be at high risk of wildfire for weeks and weeks. What are the conditions that they may then precautionary shut off the power for periods of time? Because it isn't wildfire risk is why they're shutting off the power. It's an extreme other weather condition, they've said, that would obviously, if you get a down power line or something, when you've got extreme elevated wildfire risk, they want to try and minimize that. And all the issues we saw certainly in West Boundary was the extreme, almost tornado the previous year.
Yeah.
There was a lot of issues that came with that. Well, if that was going through when all of a sudden you're at the peak of a wildfire season and potentially going to have multiple down lines, that would be multiple fires potentially starting. So I could see there being some logic to say, right, for the next 24 hours, is there a notice? We're going to shut it off because we suspect it's happening in this area. And they're coordinating with BC Wildfire and the local government and so on. But we don't have any strong information about it. And I think if we can find that out and then bring that back to be more informed for yourselves about what does this mean as we go forward. Thank you.
Director Jerry?
Thanks, Chair Baker. Back to the windstorms again. We had all those catastrophic windstorms through the boundary area. 20% of the people lost power, 80% retained. I don't want to see that 80% turned off for any reason. And I'm not gonna be for this at all.
Okay. Go ahead, Director Sawyer.
To the chair, I can understand why they would be turning off the power during windstorms, the desirability of it. Arguably, we don't need fires because of down power lines, but the downstream result for my farm is still significant. If there is mitigation, we can talk about. Is there a deal for tanks or generators or something, right? There needs to be, it's fine to make this decision at a high level, even with our feedback. If this needs to happen and policy and procedure needs to change as our climate does, as our society does, but there needs to be some awareness of the downstream effects and mitigation put in place for those that will suffer because of it.
Okay, so we need would you like to?
I think it'd be good to have a motion that this has a support for further investigation and feedback, and looking for, getting the board to consent to that.
For sure.
Okay, so moved. Thank you. Seconded by Richard. All in favor? Opposed, carried. And I think there's some heavy sweeping hands here. But we'll have to give back our Florida socks.
It was good that it was good that it was brought here though, Chair.
Oh, I-
because some of us never got that.
Oh, I understand that. So
Yeah.
cheers to Sharon.
Yeah.
For
So Sharon, thank
Look
you.
again to make sure and no.
And I haven't heard anyone in the.
You're not in danger of
Yeah,
wildfire.
we wouldn't
Well,
get a
they're
problem.
doing a presentation before Keith, so everyone really.
Contact the chair.
It's the service.
Okay, thank you for bringing this forward. Food Hub. I'm gonna turn over to James, because I think what we're asking for here is some kind of a layout that we can have reported at our boundary service committees as it progresses, so.
Sure, thanks for turning it over to me. If Director Gibbs is okay with me. providing them
Sure.
an overview, unless you,
Well, would you like me to start and then
whatever you
I
prefer.
would,
The chair will recognize our director, yes. Go ahead.
thank you. I think everybody saw the email I sent out. It was about a month ago from Colin O'Leary, the business analyst that did the business plans for all the food hubs in the province. And I guess my question is getting information. I've been struggling getting information from the food hub and understanding that it was a work in progress and they might not have had all the answers. But I think we're to the point now that that we should see the business plan, not to micromanage, but to see where it's going. We know it's a meat cut and wrap, but what sort of marketing, branding, processing, it's going to be looked at. Also the grant, looking for specifics in that, allocations for the building, like, is there enough money there for the building? It kind of all for me right now ties into the numbers. And some succession planning, like if so from what Mark Anderson had told me that the BCBA is going to own the building on regional district property. Who's responsible for the maintenance if that building, like the food hub, fails? We hope it doesn't. We hope it's a success. But should it falter, does it revert back to the RDKB, or can they just sell it to anyone they want because they are in fact owned it? Like, what's going to be involved at that contract? I think we need to discuss that here because we're all participants in
Point of order.
the budget there.
Go ahead.
I call point of order on
Yes,
this.
yes.
I brought this up at the beginning of the agenda. I was assured that this was only a conversation on how the reporting would go to the regional district. That is not what has just happened here. And quite frankly, enough already. All of those things have been answered over and over. So I'm calling point of order on that part of that conversation. If James wants to speak to how the report goes back to the regional district, I'm more than happy with that. If we're gonna, once again, beat the hell out of this, I am not gonna be happy, and I am gonna do something about it.
We have a point of order. I concur with Director Grace. I think we need to, direct, my understanding, the purpose is to have staff deliver how they're going to deliver the information to this table. And, I think that's where we're going to go. I'll ask Jerry, you had your hand up, so.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Chair Greg. I was just gonna verify the point of order, what exactly is a point of order, so that we have this verified. I'm not sure there is a point of order personally, but at least
Yes, it
we
is.
approve the budget as it stands, or we approve the agenda as it stands, and the discussion around this should be the same. And I personally don't see a problem with the discussion.
The agenda
And
was
when we
clarified.
start having these concerns around this table, we're discussing about contracts we have with other people, we really have to consider those contracts. Just saying, just think about that.
I think I'm going public.
Go ahead.
I'm really done.
I think the challenge around the subject is that certain elements, there's a contribution agreement and the grant and everything is a regional district board agreement. It's not this table
Not with boundary services.
with BCVA, where we were looking to focus on the work here was related more to our economic development kind of funds and relationship with the project as a boundary economic kind of initiative. So there is a nuance, I think, in the separation where we have kind of that agreement that the land contracts and the ownership is all a regional district ownership piece with BCVA. So some of the topics and items are essentially a board conversation where the conversations we've recently had, now we're looking at implementation, is to try and steer this as the reporting going forward on the status of the project as they start spending the money. How are they doing? How is that going? The same as we would for any kind of major project, major or minor. As they break ground, we as staff would want to know where do they sit. As an example, like with any project, they're going out for construction for the building. Does that come in within budget estimates or for the over estimates? And if so, what's the action? And that's information we're going to be needing to gather as staff as we look to then release funding. We're not going to release funding that's RDKB grant funding to anywhere where we'll be awarding and knowingly kind of going over budgets. So I think it was intended to be that kind of reporting forwards. What's the information and how are we doing? I think that's totally appropriate for this table, because this is the table that also is providing that project management annual funding this year. So it's purely more of an implementation. How are we doing? Not intended as to kind of looking back at the existing contribution agreements and kind of land deals that the board has already authorized.
Yeah, just a comment on top of that as well. Look, my feeling is at this table, these are the discussions where we need to happen. I mean, let's be honest, this is where we discuss. I'm not sure that that's been that clear in the past, but I think at this point, and I'll look to Director Gibbs here. I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. I think the recognition that this is going to go forward is there. I think what you're concerned about is the ongoing process, and to make sure that a contractor that we have, that we've appointed, is meeting the requirements and staying within budgets and accountability.
Absolutely.
Yeah, accountability.
I
Thank you, that's a good word.
Yeah.
So is that fair?
Yeah, that's absolutely, and I'm kind of disappointed that Grace left, because the one big question, if I may, it involves money. And Vicky did a report to the board saying that it was going to be 75 cents per 100,000. And even Ali came to me and said, that's not that much, Sharon. But I don't know. So is that just Area E? Is that all participating partners in Economic Service 08? And do your councils need to be aware of the amount of money that she's looking for? I couldn't get the numbers. You remember the conversation we had. We need that, right? To make the decision of how we're going to fund it. If at all, like right now, we're talking about building it, but as the operation starts, we have, we spoke to managers and cleaners and utilities and like, it's my understanding that it's a social enterprise, so that we're helping these businesses get started. The BCVA, it's still kind of in a liquidity state right now where, is that coming from grant money? Is it coming from us? And if it's expected to come from us, how much is it going to be? And that's why I think it's so important that we see the business plan. And I made a comment to James, and I was like, oh, well, look at all the offices but if that's part of the plan of branding and marketing and they need that, then do your thing, right? We're not, as Mayor Baker has pointed out to me sometimes, we're not managing this. We don't need to know the size of the conduits or the cost in detail. We do need to know that there's enough money there. Larry Olson said that. Do they even have enough money to put up the building now? Well, good question, Larry. I'll ask it at the committee. And like I said, as all participants in funding this, how much is it going to be? And then there's the property. I have this question. I'll just put it out there. So Area E purchased the property, right? Area E is paying the mortgage on that. Right? We're almost done. But then there's the 2 acres that is non-farm use for the food hub, which is great. So does BCBA control that? That's what I'd like to see. And I'd like to see the rest be Area E for other projects. Are we able just to lease them that, or do they get the whole 9 acres? And then we have to go before that, the board, like, does their board come to us what they want to do? Or if I want to do something, can their board vote it down? There's a lot of details that need to be worked out prior to doing this. I hope do you appreciate the questions?
No, and I think as a director for Area E, you have the right to ask those questions. And the staff, and we'll be able to say, this is out, get out of the weeds, Sharon. You don't need to be there. But I think these are, as a director, you have the right to ask the question, and we're able to give you the best answer we can. So.
Couple of ones there I can answer. And I think when asked the question, some of it's going to be that's a board discussion versus BCBA. Well, a bit of that's with the board because it's with the land agreement. The 75 cents per thousand, I think it wasn't presented very well. And actually, one thing I kind of remember is going back and looking into the detail. What that was referring to when they did that, Vicky provided that BCBA presentation, was the food recovery cost program. It was not the food hub. So that ongoing kind of cost is basically equated that at about, I think it's just under 50,000 now is the annual contribution, because it dropped a little bit with the rates with the Gospel Chapel and things. That's what it's costing everyone as a taxpayer for that food recovery program. The food hub, we dropped ever so slightly, but we agreed this is the last year we're funding anything as a getting started kind of program. There is zero context and agreement to provide any funding for the Fords. It's BCBA. The whole operational model is they are on their own. So that future cost and liability to us will be a future decision if, like any business, the business plan and the models of what you hope for isn't successful or is successful. I see 2 scenarios. Is they're kind of breaking even. There's nothing we get back. It's kind of a neutral situation. Or they're losing money to operate, in which what are they going to do at that point? there is not particularly kind of a plan for that in terms of funding. And the intent is meant to be as a model when it's done and built, they will be receiving a revenue for people using it that should offset cost. So if they're using it only a little bit, they're only going to have a small amount of cost to to keep the building going. If it is successful and they start to get revenues back over and above kind of a zero line, then it's described as that money then comes back as Area E made the original investment for the land, will come back to Area E economic development. So that's part of the plan. But I think we're a year, two or more down the road before we understand what is the outcome of the business model and how successful things are. If they come ultimately, is any reality, they may be struggling, and BCVA may come to this table sometime next year and say, hey, we're the following has happened, these things happened. It is a decision of everybody here at this table to make further support through our 0-0 economic development. At this point in time, there is zero intent and plan, for that. Our agreement is all around they've got to make this work and continue to look at grants. And I've had several other grants, like many of our other organisations, along the way. So ultimately, we don't know what comes next. All we know is at the moment we've got $1.x million for construction and implementation to get it to the point to be a functional facility. And we're going to have that relationship as staff to make sure that they're doing procurement and being fiscally responsible as they go through that process of the construction, because we're not going to release any grant funding unless we're happy all of the right things are in place. So it's really just kind of one step at a time. And those concerns are very valid. Like, is there enough money to construct this? This was back in just at the start of COVID when the original grants were awarded, and we know what inflation has done to everything. So how can dollars from 4 years ago still buy the same thing today? But I am looking at it slightly positively. Like just a more recent example, the Christina Lake Bridge. From a capital perspective, we started that project. Actually, the seeds of it were well over 10 years ago. And when I started here in 2018, they'd just gone through a grant application process to construct that bridge. That bridge was valued at about, it was just over a $2 million construction project. And we failed 3 times to get a grant for that project at the lake. So that design was actually done and finished in 2017. We have just in the process of successfully awarding the contract and redesigned the bridge that's bigger and wider and has more to it for $1.4 million. So we've gone down by design and progressively looking at what we're doing and how we're doing it. And we also went to market in December for that bridge just last year and got a bunch of prices all over budget. We did some tweaks, went back to market, changed some things, and we've got pricing well within budget. So there's often always a reason, and there's things that can, and I share that with a similar thing I see has happened with the Food Hub from the original plan that was put together at this kind of high level, and then this learning along the way where they've got, well, actually, that's probably not going to work, and they've learned from other food hubs. And so the design and plans have been modified around to go, right, well, this should fit for a budget. They've got, I know they've been getting estimates and things from design choices on buildings. So things should fit, but we're not going to overcommit. We've got thresholds for how things should be done. So we're not going to overcommit on the capital. And then what comes next is it is one step at a time. What I want to do with this is find a way I can report to yourselves, whether that's every other month. It doesn't want, I think every month there wouldn't be enough happening month to month to be much change. But between now and September, we're intended to get contractors, get in the ground and get the building done. And so I think it's fair to have some progressive reporting like we do for a lot of projects, so that everyone at this table has some confidence in, yeah, it's going in the right direction. And that's all about the capital and the grant.
Director Jerry.
Thanks, Chair Baker. Just if it's acceptable, I was wondering if we could have Director Gibbs or any other directors' concerns emailed to James, and James give the responses on it for us, and so that we have that in our information. Is that?
I would be happy to do.
I would appreciate that personally, that we have all this written down. We can go back to it and say, hey, what about this? If we down the road, rather than just verbal conversation.
And supplemental funding, and then James can advise what should be talked about at the board level, like the lease agreement.
That's right, that'll be all part of that.
The succession planning, that those sort of things are important.
Yeah, I like the idea of it, right? I think it's a great idea to write it down, because then it's just not verbal conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Richard.
To Chair, three things. I actually supported the food hub. I'm a supporter, but it needs to be said, and you did say it, Chair. Sharon is the elected representative from that area, and she has every right to question. And how many times have we looked at the province, and I know particularly, new power comes in and boom, stuff is gone. We lost cogen plant Midway in 2 days, gone. Our different government came in. So I accept that. And I would like Jerry, I agree, we need to see what's going on, and there needs to be discussion. I also know that third thing, and I'll keep this brief, we're just doing renovation of our community hall, and already the contractors are coming to us about costs, tariffs, and a whole bunch of other things that are coming up. So it's not just as simple as this.
Yeah, and I think we all recognize that Director Grace has, this is very personal to her as well.
Yeah, it is.
And I think that, that conversation frustrates her, upsets her, and I understand that, and I appreciate that. But on the other hand, this is a regional director. This is a table where we talk about, we're all in this thing because it's all OE, right? So we need to have a clear understanding. And I can only expect, with the tariffs and things, after I just come back from Prince George and we talk, government talking about tariffs and things. Look, we don't know where this is going to end up. I mean, even at the health board, at the hospital board, these MRIs that are, 8 million today, what are they going to be tomorrow when tariffs get attached? So, I want to be sensitive, and I want to certainly not take for granted Director Grace's concerns. But as I said before, at this table, this is where this conversation belongs, and certainly as a director for RAE, where the food hub is going to find its home. Yes, the previous director, there's things, but as you know, we're 2 years away from an election. We not all be sitting at this table, never mind somebody else. So I think if staff is quite happy to take the questions in, then that's the right thing, and then circulate them throughout the board. And I think because this was done at a board level, certainly the board needs to be, whatever movement we make ahead, it needs the 13 of us. So, yeah. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
You're okay with that, staff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we just take it away, that if there's further questions that anyone wants to ask, or whether it's just email things in, and then I can kind of share all information.
And if I could put a caveat on this, if you got questions, send them. Let's not come back here 3 months from now, and we're all repeating the same thing over again.
Yeah.
Here's an opportunity, staff, to say, look, send it in.
Well, I think, given the obvious, sensitivities around some of the elements of the conversation, if I can clarify that for yourselves, I think this going forward, what would be good, and certainly clarity for for Grace is the piece moving forwards, which I know we will be reporting on and want to see. I think the added questions and things, that's just as per discussion, and staff can take direction or answer things as they come in. But it may be good to have a motion here that perhaps agrees to staff providing a basic project sort of status report, I would call it, on the implementation and construction of the food hub as things get underway. Because then that at least has a takeaway from this conversation for me to kind of do some actual action on reporting about the project.
Yeah, go ahead, Director Richard.
To Chair, Director Grace indicated she could go public on this, or would take some legal action or do some other things. Chair, maybe you need to talk to her.
Oh, yes, I plan to have a conversation with her afterwards, once I come to the staff.
Yeah.
And I actually thank you for bringing that up, because I see Lumens online, and James is here, and I was hoping that they would talk to Grace as well as the chair, just to let her know where this conversation was going. It wasn't, as we had prior discussions before going on the agenda, it was more about, for me, I would like to see the business plan. I'd like the whole committee to see the business plan, even if it's just a high level overview, and have that reporting come back at least quarterly from James, if we could. That would help a lot, because it's a big project, right? It's a lot of money, and we want it to be successful. So knowing what's going on would help. There are a lot of constituents in my area that oppose it. And I'm just speaking candidly. I know this kind of stuff upsets Grace, but if you look at it, it's a society, a not-for-profit propping up private business, and that's how it's viewed. So it may or may not be like that. I don't even know the regulations. I'm just saying what's perceived, and perception is a lot with people that are against something. So likewise with the Fortis thing. So I think it's important that that we know where our tax dollars are, and that Area E has control of the property that we've purchased. That the whole thing shouldn't be with the society, and I understand that's going to be at a board level. So thank you for listening.
Director?
Thanks, Chair Baker. I move that staff provide reasonable reports back to the directors on the BCVA services plans forward.
Okay. Just if I may, for clarification, so I could be kind of clear on that. I think that's a little sort of broad, because BCVA have a number of works and projects and plans and grants and other initiatives. It's not just like the food hub. I think this was centered on food hub.
That's why I said reasonable.
Do you want me to read back the motion that I captured from what you had said?
Sure.
That staff provide a basic project status report on the implementation and status of the food hub on a quarterly basis.
Does it be quarterly or sometimes more than quarterly?
Or
Because we
that's what we could just make
Or as appropriate.
or as required.
as required, yeah, instead of
Yep.
quarterly.
Yep.
Because I think they're going to have a couple of months where there's a lot happening.
Right. Yeah.
And it'd just be worth to say this happened successfully in this month. What I could do for next month is, even if there isn't a huge amount to report on, kind of show sort of a template. I see Goran's been developed a really good template for the CPCC project over in East Trail for the sewer replacement, that just comes out every month. That's just high level, that like a couple of pager, budget, pictures, status, what's happened and things, and just so everybody can be informed. And I think that will be useful.
Can we have a 2-minute bio break, please?
Okay, let's see if we can get this motion passed.
Okay.
We're almost done.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So motion by Sharon, seconded. Thank you, Jerry. Motion. All those in favor?
Just for reporting, Richard.
Opposed?
Just for reporting on the.
Yeah.
Who the.
Carrie, thank you. Okay, so we'll take a couple of minute bio break.
Thank you.
Almost done.
We have a late item on animals.
Animal control.
Can you tell me what it is, because I need to go.
Actually, Linda wanted a quick update, and the update is I have a request out with the commission as we're work in progress on them developing a new contract, a model per our instructions, and to include your wonderful village in that. And so I don't have that in my hands yet. So as soon as I do, actually, I'll be reaching out to Lisa to say, here's your bill.
Have Richard sign it.
Here's the contract first, and then here's the bill.
Oh,
Yeah.
We bill them.
And despite what everybody else might say, Richard, I'm trying to make it will be fair and equitable rather than apparently you take most of the costs.
Oh, wait a second. Oh, not already.
You also.
See you, Richard. See you, Richard. Great guy.
Well, thank you for that discussion, and certainly sort of a motion we can start work on. And
Yeah, I'm really, feel bad for, that Grace got so upset about it. Because if she would have been,
Very personal to her.
well, I do understand.
That's tough work.
I could let her in on some of the conversations I faced. Yeah. Anyway, it's good to have that clarity, and that was a good suggestion, put in writing, Jerry. So we can sort what's at this committee when it goes to the board.
So you all newsed out and tariffed out and.
Did you see turnaround Tuesday? The markets bounced back 1,500 points on the Dow. It's all green across the board again.
it's going to be the biggest yo-yo in the next year and a half.
Until he finds the next order.
Well, just have to go. You never know. Flying by the seat of our pants.
I'll tell you, I was at Kofi and Tuesday, there was a lot of tension in that room as they were waiting for the outcome. Wednesday morning, breakfast was a little bit more lighthearted and a little apprehension, but not anything like it was on Tuesday night at the members of all those attendees. There were 600 there, so, and it was pretty tense as they all waited for the down mode. So, but as I said, Wednesday morning breakfast was much more pleasant.
My big concern is China. So with that economic warfare, what can they do? So China can cave to the US and do what Trump asks.
Unlikely.
They can, very unlikely, they can devalue the UN 20 to 40%. Not likely. What else can they do? They can, I'd say 2 to 3 trillion put with an economic what's the word they use? Incentive program, and which is going to cost them way more than that, and it just crushed them. They're not going to do that. So that's their economic things. I think the fourth thing is kinetic, and it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's they're posturing for that already with Greenland and Panama, right, to secure the Western Hemisphere. Yep. It's pretty intense.
Thanks for interesting chit chat, if nothing else.
Right.
All right, are we all back?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, you're still welcome. All right, moving on to late items. Animal control. Director.
Through the chair, I'm just curious how your meeting with the commissioners went.
Thank you. Yes, through the chair. Just before I was able to take off spring break. We had a meeting with them, ran through the changes of what we're interested in. And one of the bigger changes obviously being the inclusion of Midway as well. So quick, top of my head. No concerns, but we ran through an hour, but my certainly expectations on don't come back and go, oh, here's the new contract and it's up 50%, because it does not have an additional 50% in their proposal to just take on Midway. So we just chatted around the expectations of that and how we'd like that to work. One of the key ones that I did sort of shared after what we talked about, and I said that this we'd like to try for a year, so it'll be an initial year, so that's not only does it work for us in Midway, but the performance measures as well. I said this is still based around, because we don't have great stats, and they've indicated they can, get better stats now. They've got increased kind of say digital software and
Kind of picked it before.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It's not a good reason.
And so one of the things we kind of said and shared was that with stats we can be better informed after a year. And we have some idea from the information where the majority of their time is spent. But I know, like many of our services, that's often an interest for everyone around the table. Is things and are things balanced? And we can't make decisions on. I think it was actually we were chatting about it. If is one animal control officer enough? Should there be two? Is there even enough work for one? And things like that. So we said this is a service based on providing an animal control bylaw officer full time, Monday to Friday, based on that model, and now including Midway. And so we're not paying for any more resource in terms of people, time, hours. And so there's a risk that may dilute the availability of that person to service our existing areas. Ultimately, what I'm hoping to see when they come back, and this is the work I'm to do with them before we set up in a new 12-month contract, that there could be in this year per existing participant a bit of a cost saving, because we're going to have a little bit of an existing base and we're going to spread that over a larger tax base if Midway come in. Essentially that principle, rather than just be a cost plus. And the impact of that we don't know yet, hence let's then gather some stats. And see if they run off their feet responding to calls. That's why Richard might want us out there, because they're getting 10 calls a day. Then we'll be like, this isn't really working for us, right? So we really don't know what we're going to find. So I think everyone was willing to let's look at what this is like. So they understood that. Their business development manager and contract manager were then going to put together kind of that new plan and contract, and now that's on the list to chase up and get this from them this month for us to be comfortable. It's got everything in there. The other things we want in there are around, and they were already listed, and Laura kind of highlighted them out, the performance measures that we want to see, and go through all of that. So hope to have that in place sort of this month. What we didn't have was any requirement to sort of bring that back for review and consideration, because it's essentially, here's what we want to do, an interim year's plan. I would intend to bring that back anyway before getting it started, but more as information, because I might have it ready like early May, but maybe not in time for BSC. So it's actually not. This is a good point to just clarify with yourselves. If you want to see it and look at all the content of what that is before we sign on the line, because as it stands currently, we've got authority as staff within budget to go ahead and enter into a new 12-month contract with Midway included. So I can bring that back to you. There's no impediment to the service because we're rolling month to month. So actually, I'd be interested, do you want to see a final draft before we sign on the line? Or do you want me to try and get that in place ASAP and then just say, here, for your information, here's the contract that we're running for 12 months?
I'm speaking to the participants.
Through the chair, it was my understanding that this committee was going to workshop both the contract and the bylaw in advance of anything being signed. Now I am hearing you say that they're going to decide how they're going to do it and give it to us to be signed. That was not what we discussed here.
No, through the chair, they're going to have to meet the requirements we've laid out. That's my job to make sure that's all. I wouldn't have a contract set up that doesn't meet those things. It's not them telling us, it's us telling them through me. I've already got kind of your orders, so to speak, there. But happy to bring it back. As I say, it's not that we're not getting service kind of thing.
Right.
So if it takes, well, by the time I get it back and I'm comfortable that it's good, it might be June by the time you see it. So, but we're not losing anything in the meantime because they're doing the business, right? And the bylaw piece is independent to them. We can get into that. I think conversation, what we'd ask was let's get the contract set up and done, and then roll our hands up and look at the bylaw. If we change things in the bylaw, then it's us telling us, you're reinforcing your terms and conditions Y, not terms and conditions X. And so unless it fundamentally changes their role, us changing the bylaw wouldn't necessarily have any direct reflection on the contract.
So at this moment, do we need a motion to say,
Sorry, I was going to go to Director Jerry.
I would just prefer to review before we okay it. I think.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too. So I'll bring that back as soon as we've got it done. It might be for May if I get info back
No, I just.
in time, but I don't want to. I can see what's going to happen. I'm probably going to get something back from them a few days before, a little bit before the end of this month, and maybe not having a. I anticipate I'm probably going to have back and forth 2 or 3 times with them until I'm comfortable. The staff, we're comfortable. It's got everything in it should have, the right performance criteria, the budget's appropriate, and so on and so forth. Before I bring it back, and I think with that back and forth, I'm probably going to run out of time before the agendas for May. So if you're comfortable, definitely by June we'll have something in place, and we'll bring it back to you as a final draft, then for June.
Okay.
It sounds to me like the participants are happy rolling. with it
Participants,
the
as
way-
long as we're participants
Until
are
you
happy.
get it the way you want it.
And Richard will speak for him anyway, so it's not a problem.
Yeah. Sure, to pick up some dog food for me on the side.
Yeah, maybe we'll open up the tab.
I do have a follow-up, Chair.
Okay. Go ahead.
What happened to the lady that was chased by dogs? It was in the city bill. I did send you an email, and a
Yes.
follow-up email.
Yeah. And
We're laughing.
I'm trying to remember that one because there has been a couple. I'd have to go and follow up because I've sent everything that a little bit before spring break. I spoke to Joseph on a few of the files and cases.
Yeah.
So I don't know where they're at, but they were following up on all of the.
I don't like to micromanage, but at this moment I have minimal faith in their ability to follow up.
Mhm.
Go get him, James.
Excellent, thank you for your work on
Oh,
this.
Yeah, no, we're getting there one step at a time.
Excellent, I appreciate it.
All right, so moving along, discussions for further agendas. Jerry, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Baker. I think we need to address the MRDT. I'd like to have a discussion on that. It's not a 5-year plan for the increase of the MRDT money. It's up to us. We give a 9-month notice to the Destination BC as far as I've read. So if we get clarification maybe on that,
Okay.
I think it's money that we can bring back to our communities. Chair McGregor has a great point about it in her areas. totally fine, but if we have these conversations and then we have another good conversation with Destination BC about what we want that money to do, I think it's a lost opportunity not having that 3% personally. So I think if we can bring that back to next meeting to discuss, that'd be great.
Okay,
And I guess I don't know if it's not probably for this meeting, but when we were talking about all this stuff about the food hub, it brought me to think about policy and personnel. And what kind of policies do we have in regards to contractual relationships with other parties that are part of our monies, right? So for example, like, to me, I think it should be very strict as a regional district. If we're getting a partnership with somebody, that we have very strict guidelines like how we deal with the money with them. And there should be no, well, no, this is how we do it. If you want to partner with the regional district, these are the rules that you have to follow. Otherwise, we don't partner. Because I get concerned when a group like this has contractual issues and discussions over litigation. Like, we should have a strong point in our policies and procedures that says, hey, this is how we conduct business when we have to have joint grants or joint contracts. Our rules, you abide, or we do business with somebody else. So,
and I think also a lot of grants come with their own requirements, right? To
Yeah.
report and what is required to get the grant. So I think that's recognition. So, okay. So PNP. All right, any questions from the media and the public? No hands up, nobody's flashing. It is 11:36, a motion to adjourn. Approved, meeting's adjourned. Thank you all online.
your
Thank you.